You have to know who you're talking to and what you're trying to say to them. You got to pick a platform. So depending on who you're trying to reach determines how you're going to do that. So maybe it's social media, maybe it's direct mail, maybe it's radio, maybe it's TV. That's all going to go back to who your audience is.
My money's on radio. I'm just saying.
That is shocking to me.
Shocking. We got the spectrum. I know it's shocking. Yeah. But no, you're right. I mean, depending on what your business is and what your product or service is, you have to know what your platform is. Where are your people?
Well, and the thing is, your money's on radio, obviously for a couple of reasons. One, the building we're sitting in, but two, and more importantly, because this is one of the strongest radio markets in the country.
Absolutely. Radio red hot because it works.
Well, I mean, it's crazy though, because, we do work in markets all over the U.S. And there are some markets where radio does nothing. Like we don't even think about it. It's all TV, or all online, or print even in a few small, rare spots still out there. It makes a lot of sense. But this is one of, I would tell you, the top 3, top 4 radio markets that we deal with.
Well, that's amazing. And I'm just thinking off the top of my head, this may just be a hypothetical, but because we live in a more or less rural area, we have the hub city and then outlying areas. There's a lot of drive time on rural roads. I lived in St. Martinville. I know that was a 40-minute drive for me to get to UL. I was listening to radio the whole time. Could that be part of that?
TSL, time spent listening, is a big part of it. That's number one. Number two is the types of lifestyles we have. Being rural and agriculture, you have a lot of people listening to it while they're working out in the field. We also have some really great streaming stations. You've got people who are listening to it at work. Even if you don't listen in your car because you're a satellite radio, iPod, CD, whatever, you're still going to hear it when you're walking into a store.
Absolutely.
We have more stores that broadcast live radio than almost any place else. Then you come back around to formats. We've got some really great, strong formats in this town. And last but not least, personalities. There's so many people who are incredibly loyal to the radio personalities in this town because there's relationships. You don't have a here for a year and gone on to a bigger, better market.
Right.
You've got people who've been on the air for 10, 20, 30, 40 years.
She said 40 years and looked at me. Why?
For you to reference who that is. But in this community, that doesn't happen in other places.
It does not.
Right.
I mean,
it really doesn't.
Y'all, come on. Every other market in this country is like a stepping stone to somewhere else, and they just keep going up, and then they start coming down. Here, people are really invested, and so that's why radio is so tight. When you look at TV, for example, you don't have those long-standing relationships. We had a few, but they've all retired.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Naturally.
So it really does make this a heavy radio market. And so it's powerful. And what we find is when we go into other markets, and necessarily a client isn't buying radio before we get there, and we look and we're like, oh, that's why you weren't buying radio. Because it doesn't make sense in that market.
Sure.
So it's not across the board, across the U.S. It's just a few. And this is one of the best.